All right, let's talk about the Federal Reserve. Because right now, they're facing this huge, high stakes decision. And honestly, it's something that's going to affect all of us, from our savings accounts to the global economy as a whole.
Okay, so picture this. You're America's central bank, and you're getting some seriously mixed signals. On one hand, the job market looks like it's starting to weaken. But on the other hand, inflation, it's still stubbornly high. So what do you do? I mean, how do you make a call when the data is literally pointing in two opposite directions?
Well, that's exactly the big call Fed policymakers are facing this week. They're meeting to decide whether to cut interest rates for what would be the third time this year. And with those conflicting signals we just talked about, you can bet the stakes are sky high. Now, if you ask the financial markets, it's a no-brainer. They're pretty much all in on a rate cut. In fact, traders are betting so heavily on it that the market-implied odds are sitting at about 89%. So, case closed, right?
Well, not so fast. Here's where it gets really interesting. Even though the markets are sure, the actual committee making the decision, they are deeply split. So yeah, this is anything but simple.
Okay, so to really get why there's such a big disagreement, let's break down the two camps. First up, you have the argument for a rate cut. This is the view of the so-called economic doves. These are the folks who usually lean towards lower rates to keep the economy humming along. So what are the doves worried about? Well, their main concern is the job market. They're seeing signs that hiring is slowing down, and they're thinking, hey, let's get ahead of this. They want to act now, kind of like putting up a safety net before things take a turn for the worse. And they've got some data to back this up. For example, the unemployment rate just ticked up to 4.4%. Now, for the doves, that's not just a number on a page. To them, it's a big, flashing red light that says the job market is running out of gas. All right, so that's one side. Now let's flip the coin and look at the other camp, the hawks. These policymakers are looking at a completely different threat. Their number one priority is wrestling inflation back under control. And for the hawks, cutting rates right now would be like pouring gasoline on a fire. They're looking at this sticky, persistent inflation and saying, whoa, that's the real danger here. They're worried that making it cheaper to borrow money will just make inflation even tougher to beat. And this really gets to the heart of their argument. Inflation is still above the Fed's 2% target. You know, in a normal world, that fact alone would mean rate cuts aren't even part of the conversation. So you can see the tough spot they're in. So there you have it, these two huge competing problems. A cooling job market on one side and stubborn inflation on the other. It's no wonder this has created a massive public split right down the middle of the committee. You know, a former senior Fed official, William English, put it perfectly. He said, it's just a really tricky time. Perfectly sensible people can reach different answers. And that really hits the nail on the head, right? It shows the huge challenge for the Fed chair, Jerome Powell. It's not just about reading the data. It's about trying to get everyone on the same page when really smart people are looking at the same info and coming to totally different conclusions. And this isn't just some quiet disagreement behind closed doors. The split is so serious that we could see up to 3 officials actually vote against the final decision. And let me tell you, that kind of public dissent is super rare. We haven't seen that many dissenting votes in about 6 years. And check this out. It really shows you the whole spectrum of disagreement. You've got 2 officials, Jeffrey Schmid and Alberto Musalem, who are expected to say, nope, let's hold rates steady. But then on the complete opposite end, you've got Stephen Moran, who might argue that a quarter-point cut isn't even enough.
So you've got a committee that's all over the map. How on earth do they come to an agreement? Well, it looks like the answer is going to be a compromise.
Yeah, most economists are now betting on something they're calling a hawkish cut. And it's basically a way to try and make everyone happy. The doves get the rate cut they want right now, but the hawks, they get some very cautious wording that basically signals the Fed is going to hit pause on any more cuts for a while, just to see how things shake out. So what does that all mean? It means on the day of the decision, the big news actually won't be the cut itself. Nope. Everyone, especially investors, will be glued to every single word Chair Powell says. They'll be listening for any clue, any hint that this is the last cut for a while. It's all about that forward guidance. But look, even after this week's decision is made, the road ahead is still super murky. This one move isn't going to magically solve the whole economic puzzle. There's just so much else going on that makes things even more complicated. You've got political pressure, for one. Then there's the fact that Chair Powell's term is up in May. Oh, and a recent government shutdown means they're behind on getting key economic data, so they're kind of flying blind. At the end of the day, what they do next is going to come down to what the next round of jobs and inflation numbers look like. And all of this just brings us right back to that huge, fundamental question. With a Fed this divided and with so many mixed signals, how do you possibly steer the entire economy through such an uncertain future? It's like they're walking a tightrope with no safety net, and we're all just watching and waiting to see what happens.